Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sacred Remembering Podcast, episode 197. I'm Sarah Poet, and today we're going to be talking about, yes, decentering men, but also centering yourself, putting yourself at the center of your life as a woman, and centering the feminine. And I am calling this the energetically advanced version because I had heard that this topic was kind of booming right now from one of my clients. And I thought to myself, well, I talked about that quite a bit last year in 2024. The exact space for that I can point you toward that I remember is in the Sacred Remembering podcast episodes that I did with Mary Costello. We talked a lot about how there's been this false center of creation, and we need to decenter men and make women, but like more specifically, our own lives, our own center. So I know that we have spoken about that. And today I want to go deeper with that. I want to do an updated version and again, advanced energetics behind this. So this is not going to sound like those other videos that you find on YouTube about this topic. This is for the advanced ones. And I'm not going to be even speaking very much about behaviors, right? Like man woman behaviors, so much as I'm going to be speaking about the energetics of masculine and feminine, how they work in creation. I'm going to be busting some false myths that are very, very common in masculine feminine teachings and polarity spaces about what feminine and masculine should and should not be doing that are actually hurting women and still siphoning from women. So I'm definitely going to call that out in this episode. And then I want you all to know about the inner circle, because what is happening as I become more and more calibrated in my own center and my own organization of my feminine energetics is that there's this level of teaching that we do in the podcast, and then there is a community called the Inner Circle. This is new as of this month, August 2025. And the Inner Circle is where I'm going to be going deeper into the energetic transmissions. So this podcast in and of itself is an energetic transmission. If you listen to my voice and you listen to this information, you are going to receive something energetically. You are going to feel it. You're probably going to be activated. It's going to change your life. It's going to give you some aha moments. That is the point of why I do the Sacred Remembering podcast, right? Because we are remembering who we are. We are women on this path. But I have deeper teachings, and I'm also channeling the energetics that I'm talking about in this podcast. So for this podcast episode alone, I'm going to do like at least 3 additional energetic activation, meditative, deeper teachings. And these go into the inner circle. Now, you don't want to wait to join the inner circle because the whole thing is housed in a Telegram group. It's very simple, actually. It's very energetically simple. But when you join, you can only see like a little bit of what just happened, right? So you get the activation when you are active in the circle. You actually don't get to access that full library. So you want to stay active in the inner circle. And if you're catching this podcast in a year and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I had more information about this topic. Well, I'm also taking most of those transmissions that I'm putting in the inner circle and making them for sale in my website store. So there is a meditation activation storefront, if you will. at sarahpoet.com. So you can go there at any time and begin like receiving from this collection of activations. And I'm very excited that this is moving in this direction because, you know, talking about it is one thing, but like deepening into it's really these primordial feminine energetics, right? The restructuring of creation is occurring. It is occurring. And it is not ideas based. It is not like, oh, I remember, you know, that I have this thing called the sacred feminine and I want to be in right relation. Actually, this is very relevant to this podcast. I'll just dive in right here. So what so often happens on this sacred remembering path, right? When a woman remembers that there's this thing called the sacred feminine and this thing called the sacred masculine, what so many women immediately want, because we've been so freaking hurt by past relationships and patriarchy, we begin thinking, I did this too, we think, well, I want the sacred masculine man to come into my life to like show me what men are supposed to be like. I want to experience the sacred masculine through a man. And that's where we start to get some of this rhetoric that we hear like in these spiritual teachings and masculine feminine teachings. That's like, well, the masculine is supposed to be XYZ. The masculine is supposed to be divinely provisional. Always perfect, right? That's the projection. He's supposed to be things like the riverbanks to her river, right? We hear these things and we think, oh, that sounds good. I want to experience that through a man, and like I want to find it. That is one of the biggest mistakes we can actually make. Sorry to burst your bubble. Like warning label. Please don't do that. Please don't project your desire to experience the sacred masculine onto a man. What are you doing? If you're doing that, you are centering the man again, right? Because we're trying to come out of patriarchy that had us like totally focused in the direction of men. How do I need to behave in order so that I receive? What is he doing? Am I safe? All of those things, right? And a lot of that just gets transferred into these new age spirituality like ideas about awakening masculine and feminine because we haven't gotten to the root yet. And I'm not saying that everything that I give you is ultimately true, is something I'm always going to say is true, or like you shouldn't give your power to me, right? You are sovereign unto yourself. I'm a woman who has dug so deep into these things, has spent so many years of my life with these things. Like I believe that I am here to share these things, but you must run it through your own filter and your own source connection, right? Because our filter gets a little clogged if we're not in that source connection. I'm going to be talking about that today too. So you want to be in your source connection so that you can feel what's true and what's not true. And when there's resonance in something I'm saying, great, let it light you up. When you are like skeptical or don't want to touch it, great, don't touch it, leave it, right? Take what serves, leave the rest. That's all we can do. We got to be autonomous. We got to be like thinkers for ourselves, right? And just real quick, as a little like premise of things yet to come is that such a huge amount of the actual fuckery that we have about who's centered and who's giving what, and like how do we actually reconstruct and map these energetics. So much of the fuckery comes because of exchanges. And this is like, I have been talking about resources and exchanges much, much more in the last few years. And I'm not going to stop. And I encourage you to pay attention because it is in the root of the exchange and the exchange dynamic that so much of this is determined. Okay, and that might not make sense right now. That's okay. I'm going to touch on that as we go. Okay, but much of what we project onto feminine and masculine is actually in an effort to preserve receiving. Okay, and there's a lot that has historically deflated the feminine. I mean, just tune into that for a minute. The collective history, right, devalued the feminine and feminine resources, but set up systems to continually extract and benefit from the feminine, from feminine energy. So much of the energetic organization to the systems that we have in place right now is set up to, yes, decenter women, but in doing so, it extracts feminine energy toward whatever that false center is. So if that false center is man, and we have made that collectively a centered thing, that is a false center in a woman's life. And the more energy a woman gives toward a false center other than herself and her own source connection, the more her feminine energy is going to be siphoned from her and given to that false center. This was very, very purposeful. The energetics of creation itself were skewed, were tampered with, okay, by interdimensional forces. But it gets wild, right? The truth of this, but the mathematics of the organization of creation have been skewed such that your feminine energy is being siphoned from you. Your creational energy is being siphoned from you and given to false structures, given to false power structures, one of which may be called a man, right? So we need to not just decenter men, but we need to recenter ourselves in our own source connection, okay? And okay, a couple things about this. Dr. Vanya Leilani, I had the pleasure of interviewing her for this podcast. She wrote a gorgeous book called The Flesh and the Fruit. And she talks about women being the center of our own circle. And that is just such a beautiful thing to feel into, right? Like being the center of our own circle. If we even just take a breath with that, there's an invitation for a homecoming, right? There's an invitation to not overreach. Give so much in the hope that you'll get something back. Those decentering behaviors could begin to heal if we just remember, I need to be the center of my own circle. I am the center of my own circle, right? Then I'll add to that there's an energetic calibration that is a channel that you are. This is the way I see it. And this channel, we talk about you won't hear me talk about chakras, but in the world, they talk about these 7 chakras in the body, right? From your base to the top of your head. And so that channel, it's the reason I mention that is because it's pointing to the verticality of who we are, right? But we actually have more than 7, right? The dimensionality of who we are goes to 12D and beyond. So there is a source channel. And as I see it, there's this origination point where we are of source, right? And then we like individuate and come on down into these bodies with our feet on this ground. And so then our energy channel also goes down and into the earth. This is almost like never talked about. Okay. And I see it even further than that Earth star. I see it down to this center, like the diamond center of the planet. So when we resurrect that source channel, this does not happen overnight. It does not happen once and done. It does not happen in one lifetime necessarily. Okay. It's like we work on it. We intend for it to be. And so we're correcting the energetics and the architecture. You'll hear me talk about this, the architecture of that source channel, because the architecture was attacked over our, soul's history in many, many lifetimes, and in this lifetime as well. So we have, we have breakages, etc., and we are recalibrating that source channel, right? So we're the center of our own circle. We connect to source through our source channel. There's some stuff out there, like new agey stuff, that's like, I am source. I don't say that. Like, no, I'm a human, right? That I'm kind of getting on a side tangent, so I'm going to recenter myself. And then, okay, center of our own circle, source channel, and then we have the recalibration of the spiral and the crystal spiral of creation, and that is more advanced. Okay. And so my goal here, and in the work that I'm channeling, what I'm giving you in the inner circle, what I feel is my sacred remembering mission to do, is to get us to a place where we are energetically recalibrating with creation, such that we become creator beings again. Okay. And if we just think about this very broadly, if systems were set up to siphon feminine energy away from women, and women are so freaking depleted and burnt out from serving everyone else first and overextending ourselves, etc., we don't even like that. We're so far from bringing our energy home, correcting what was actually stolen from us, and becoming creational in alignment with creation. Again, I talk about the soils of creation. It's like the cosmic womb, like the inside of the womb. Like these things are so very creational, but I myself have journeyed for many years, and I feel like I'm at the tip of it's not an iceberg, it's like the entrance to the womb portal, right? Like I'm a mother of 2 children. I have created human beings that are so amazing through my body, through my womb. Like the organization that is required of that. Like, do you ever sit around and think about like, oh my God, creation knows how to organize, right? Okay, this is a really big point, right? Creation knows how to organize. Your womb, your wisdom knows how to organize, and you know how to create form. You know how to create form. You know, instinctually, inherently, in our feminine systems, we have the remembering, the gnosis, the original wisdom to remember how to be creator beings. And all of this hustling, all of this burnout, all of this making men the center, hoping that they love us, hoping that they provide for us, etc., is untrue. It is like programs inserted into the collective consciousness so that you think that you're doomed unless you like have these things from the external. And so we need to come back to the center of our own circle, the center of our source channel, and recalibrate the energetics of creation. And I see that that spiral actually at the womb and the earth level. And I am definitely putting activations and more teachings about that in the inner circle. Okay. So I want to go into a little bit of myth busting with like things we hear about feminine and masculine. I feel like I could talk about these things all day. But I will not do an all-day podcast, and I will revisit them often. And if you have questions about this, I would love to hear these questions, because there are so freaking many distortions. And I will tell you that I was out there in social media land and Facebook land, and I was teaching about feminine and masculine, and the more and more I calibrated to source, the more and more my own like source, like the direction that came from my alignment was like, that's false, bump. That's false, bump. And these things just had to clear and get out of my field. And I'm talking about like teachers who I paid money to learn from could no longer be teachers. Okay. Because I was like, oh, this is essentially built on feminine siphoning. Oh, this is another form of feminine siphoning, etc. So I'm not going to, feminine submission, that's myth number one. I would say that I was curious about this, and it could maybe seem like a sexy sort of idea, like in a very committed relationship. And my own soul bumped this one out like pretty quickly. So feminine submission. Okay. All right. Women are sold this, that the way to be feminine is to submit to a masculine. All right. Two major things about this, at least two major things about this. At its best, this is just a bad idea. At its worst, this is a systemic setup for feminine siphoning. And I think a lot of people are playing with this to play with that polarity of feminine and masculine, but it's just so exaggerated, and it actually doesn't exist in nature in this way. So let's look at what nature shows us of feminine masculine energetics. First of all, the feminine in nature, or in the cosmos, in creation, like the feminine that births creation, is so vast. It is so vast. It is untamed. It is like spaciousness itself, right? Like the cosmic womb. Just think about this. Like the cosmic womb would be like all of the, all of space, all of the dark matter. Like it's just so freaking infinite. Okay. And masculine at its best is electrification. Okay. So neither one of them, I'm going to say this is something that I know even my peers might contest. I might disagree with myself later, but this is how I see it. So neither one of them exactly is going to produce anything on their own, and neither one of them alone is responsible for provision. They both provide different things. Like the womb of creation provides the spaciousness. The masculine provides the electrics. Okay. So the masculine is really the organizing, like, instrument. The masculine electrics are the organizing force, because when they meet with the vastness, they can come together. Like the vastness organizes around the electrics, and vice versa. It's just so compatible. It's so fair. It's so equitable. It is natural. It is creation. There's not a power dynamic whatsoever. The electrics have to be in integrity if they're going to organize this force of the feminine, of the spaciousness. And so you can see how that is so not the template of feminine submission. If the feminine is submitting or making herself lower than or less than a masculine figure, it feels so gross in my system right now. It kind of just feels like vomit, because it's just siphoning, and it's like not even respectful at all. The other really dangerous thing is that for a woman to be actually making herself lower than and submitting to a man without, oh my gosh, without being so strong in her own source channel, a man is just like, a man is a man, right? This, to not drop her, to not totally fuck this up, he would have to be an immaculate man who is so in integrity in his own source connection and how he lands those source energetics to really do that. Like, I hope that this is making sense. So, like, as ordinary women, we are not submitting whatsoever to ordinary men. Like, no. And I made this mistake so hard, like 8 years ago. I laid down my discernment. I thought I was practicing like sacred feminine ideas. I gave my autonomy to a man to lead something that he was completely incapable of leading. And the energetics of that stabilization of those source electrics were not there at all. And I got dropped so hard, y'all, like so hard. And it was my decision to get involved in that and some really hard learning. But if I can help you, that is what I'm here for. So yeah, this thing of feminine submission, we have to be really careful with. Because usually a woman is collapsing her own template. And why is she doing that? She would do that in order to receive. That's the exchange part. That's the fuckery that we're not talking about. Mark my words, it'll probably be in way more YouTube videos in another 2 years. So it's the exchange at the root that gets us into trouble, right? Like the desire to receive as women. We have this desire to receive so deeply, but at the same time, we have forgotten our creational capacity. So another false template, I believe, of masculine, sacred masculine, what we project onto men is that they are provisional. And again, I could go on about this all day. I'll be quick and wrap it up. But that provision template also has historic ties to men having access to resources when women didn't. So it's this economic privilege historically in society that like we're not addressing that when we're talking about like, well, the man, you know, should be provisional. We are encapsulating this like systemic collective shadow of what the masculine has been and putting it into this like pseudo sacred language, and it's still fucking us up. Okay. So again, both are provisional. The Holy Mother, the Holy Father, the feminine, the masculine, both are provisional. That definition is much broader than just economic, right? And, you know, think of, I always say this, but like think of a system in nature that is undisturbed, right? So if this were 2,000 years ago and this was an indigenous situation and we were living close to the land and a woman just gave birth, yes, he's going to bring the meat. He's going to bring the food to the fire, right? Like he's going to provide. And there are some biological things that just friggin' make sense about that, right? But what's happening, like she's providing the milk for the child. Like it's so provisional. The whole thing really is so beautiful in the exchange dynamic, if that exchange dynamic is respectable, if it's natural. Okay. The third one, I'll be real quick about this, like myth busting, still on that. So, the riverbanks to the river thing, you guys have heard this, like the masculine is supposed to be the riverbanks to her river. This is energetic distortion because the feminine does not need containment. Again, the feminine is spaciousness. The electrics have to be in integrity in order for things to organize. So to say that the masculine is the structure or the containment is going to be grossly limiting to the feminine and to her capacity. And you are going to want to bust the fuck right out of that container eventually, because again, men are men, just like women are women, right? We're human. So why would you let another human make a box for you to fit in? Like, isn't that what we're trying to get out of, right? So this idea that the masculine should always be providing the structure, should always be providing the containment for the woman to be in, is another false and diminishing concept. It's really, truly a diminishing concept of the feminine. And my heart goes out to all of us, right? Because we explore these things because we are just like trying to heal and we're seeking the truth. And that is so, so understandable, right? And we might all have to go through this to remember. Of course, we have to go through what we have to go through in order to remember what is ours to remember and really integrate. So moving into the conclusion, what's really hitting me in this moment is that there's this period of time that I think we move through on this sacred remembering journey where we really have to claim sovereignty on our womb, all of our energy, all of our resources for sure, but our womb and our creational capacity. And when we have loose relationships with men where we're not very clear, and this is a relationship where two people are organized by source, held by source, each sovereign, and we are choosing to relate in the name of God, in the name of creation, right? That is where we begin to have true relational integrity. That is the world that we are moving toward. Okay, as we go through all of this and shed what is not true and bring more and more of our source connection back, more and more of our own energetic autonomy and awareness, we are looking for those sovereign unions, right? Anything less than that is probably going to drain your feminine resources. It's probably going to leave you in burnout. It's going to, I talk about the 8 feminine resources all the time. You are going to be leaking those 8 feminine resources to serve a system that is not energetically, architecturally sound, sacred, and sovereign. And so this is why I do the work that I do, because your energy is so precious. We must, call it back to ourselves, but learn these 8 feminine resources, learn how we are giving them, learn how we are exchanging them, become mindful of all of these things, right? So that we can make very, very sovereign decisions about our exchanges, who we exchange with, how we exchange our feminine resources, etc. Not not saying exchange in a transactional sort of way, but humans, like, we're all exchanging all the time, right? So let's get really conscious about what is the root of the desire to exchange with any given man or any given human or any given system, right? And if we still have those tendrils of survivalist, lack, I'm not going to be okay, first of all, you are so normal. This is the way this was set up. These frequencies were so ingrained. And while they were stealing feminine resources, for multiple thousands of years, like, you women just were in survival and totally dependent on men in order to be okay, right? Like, dependent on false systems and false structures, because it wasn't just men, it was like the structure of the entire system, right, was centered on men. And then our resources were just poured into that false center. I said this in the beginning. And so as we are becoming more sovereign and getting our energy back into our own center, redevoted to source, etc., there are so many frequencies that we're really coming up against, right? So we have this on the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, and the energetic layers. And we just continue to do this and to do this and to do this. And I should have said this in the beginning, perhaps, but decentering men and decentering these systems, getting them out of our womb space so that we can create with our womb space again, being the center of our own circle and spiral. We get those, like, we need to do this for the benefit of all. This isn't about anti-man. This isn't about, like, needing to get away from men. Obviously, we all need each other. Obviously, we all want somebody to snuggle with. Obviously, like, relationship is amazing. We want it. We want union. The world needs sacred union, et cetera, et cetera. So this isn't anti-male. This is pro-creation, right? This is pro-creation's template so that we can all be sovereign. And I actually did a little brainstorm too. I'm going to write a little piece about all of the ways that I can think of that decentering men actually also benefits men, right? And it does, because it just frees them from so much energetic entrapment that leads to, performance, perfectionism, siphoning, domination, like poor behavior, entitlement, but like, if a man were also freed from the energetics of this skewing of the energetics of creation, then, like, they're going to rise into what creation intended of them as well, right? So sovereignty in our energetics is always the best possible scenario for all. So if you enjoyed this conversation or want to learn more, I have 3 actually invitations for you. I just thought of a third. So one, I've mentioned it before, the Inner Circle is alive. It is open. You can find that at sarahpoet.com/inner circle and join at the monthly or the quarterly level. Second invitation is to work with me privately if you are ready for that and if you want to invest at that level. It's about a 6-month container right now, meeting 3 on, 1 off, but you can look at my website for that as well. And I actually have women's and men's pages and offerings at this point, so you can look for that. And I do couples work. Okay, so my couples work is so beautiful and helps you to recalibrate the energetics in the system, to move away from traumas, to move away from the dynamics of false exchange, etc., and get past those old trauma points and trauma patterns and move into energetics and consciousness that allow for more belonging, connection, freedom, expression, prosperity, mutual creation, like building what you're here to build together, from family to business. So I serve in that way as well. You can find that at sarahpoet.com as well. Thank you all for tuning in to this podcast. I would love to hear from you. I would love to know what you think, and I would love to hear your questions. So pop a comment or email me at sarah@sarahpoet.com, and I'd love to hear from you. I hope you have such a blessed day. I hope that you take some time today to be the center of your own circle, to call your energetics back home, to really focus on that womb space. And yeah, any energetic that does not feel sovereign, that it feels like it is energetically pulling on your womb, big invitation to clear that out of your life pronto. Okay, much love, and I will see you soon.